the space program was shutting down, and furthermore, people allegedly being realists were telling me, look, space explorers are people you see on television. Real people in our world, can be accountants or teachers or, lawyers or things like this. But those other people, the people doing space exploration, they're the people kind of on the other side of the TV screen, as it were. So I said, okay, I'll be a science teacher in that case. But, so I was a science teacher. I taught science in secondary schools for about 7 years. Towards the end, I was teaching in Brooklyn. I was living in Manhattan and taking an hour each way on the A train and reading novels by Herman Melville about sailing the South Seas and saying, what am I doing here? And, so I decided to go back to graduate school to study engineering, and then I heard about this group of people of my own generation who called themselves the Mars Underground, who were holding conferences in Colorado saying that Mars has got to be put back on NASA's agenda. NASA, after Apollo, retreated from this idea of humans settling the solar system to, well, we're going to launch satellites and stuff like that. And so I went to one of their conferences, and I said, this is where I belong. And by then I had an engineering background, and I met one of the people who was running the studies at Martin Marietta on how to human Mars missions, a guy named Ben Clark, and he sent me a resume, and I sent him my resume, and a year later I was working at Martin Marietta doing preliminary design of International Highway Chamber.
My name is Vaughn. I'm from Boston.
Say your name again?
Vaughn, V-O-N.
You like Victor, right?
Yeah, Victor, Oscar, November.
Okay, what did you want to say tonight, Vaughn?
I was just wondering if there's enough viable water on the moon to sustain life as we know it.
That's a good question. Hold on, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. And, Mars is where the science is, it's where the challenge is, and it's where the future is. And I don't think we're going to inspire the next generation with the challenge of repeating something that was done in their grandparents' day. But, gosh, we went there 53 years ago. 53 years ago, a half a century. Yeah, and it seems like we have nothing to show for it today. Well, we have something to show for it. We doubled our number of science graduates as a result of that program. And those people went off and they did the computer revolution. Okay, we created a huge amount of intellectual capital as well as a number of important inventions, solar energy, computers, all this kind of stuff came out of the space program. But we don't have the moon, and that's a problem. Yeah. But we're going to get the moon back, and we're going to get Mars, because I think this entrepreneurial space revolution is going to knock down the key obstacle to doing things in space, which is the cost of getting there. Let's go to Cleveland. First-time caller, Jim's with us. Hi, Jim. Thanks for calling.
Hey, how you doing, boy? I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys and ask you this question I've been wanting for many, many years.
Let's see if we can help you out here.
Well, there's the tale about the robber who they asked him why he robbed banks, and he said that's because that's where the money is. Why aren't we going to where the water is? Why are we landing in, craters that may have had water at some million years ago? The water's where the polar caps are. I was a little kid and I saw that there were polar caps there, and they changed as a season. I was like, let's go. I mean, it's right there. Why aren't we landing by the water and taking our fishing poles with us? I don't get it.
Good question. What do you think, Robert? Well, yeah, NASA came up with a slogan about 10 years ago, follow the water. Water is where you might find life. But, there is some water on the moon, but there's a hell of a lot more on Mars. And not just at the polar cap. We've now found glaciers on Mars that are as far south as 38 degrees north. That's the same latitude as San Francisco. So there's water to be had on Mars at the same kind of latitudes where most Americans live. Let's go to Todd, Kirkland, Washington. Thanks for calling, Todd. Go ahead. Thank you, George. Now, I heard on your program Robert Zimmerman say that when the NASA was modeling the rover vehicle, that they had gotten a G.I. Joe doll to put on it, which was the same size, 1.6 scale. So I'd like to know if you're going to use G.I. Joe to model the Mars uniforms, which will land on Mars when you go.
Robert Zimmerman is a space historian, Robert. I think you know of him.
Yeah, sure.
And he talked about that. Are they ever going to use a model-sized G.I. Joe for anything?
Well, they might do it for fun. If they send some micro rovers to Mars, why not put some G.I. Joes in them? I mean, Musk, when he sent his Tesla to Mars, put a mannequin in it. They call it the Starman. There's something you should, you gotta have your sense of humor when you go to Mars.
Is Musk or Bezos, have they made any money yet with their space explorations?
Well, Musk has made some. The SpaceX is now the world's leading launch company.
That's amazing.
Musk actually this year launched more satellites than the whole rest of the world put together.
What was it that got him to decide to form that kind of company?
The desire to make humanity a multi-planet species. I met Musk first in 2001, and he came to a Mars Society fundraiser, and he actually eventually gave a very large donation, which helped us establish our Mars Desert Research Center. And he joined our board for a while, but at a certain point he said to me, look, first of all, number one, I'm not the kind of guy that wants to be part of somebody else's operation. I got to lead my own show. That's how I am.
That's him.
And he had already made all the money he could ever dream of needing at PayPal, which was this thing.
Yeah, and he still was part of that.
And he had actually cashed out a significant chunk before the internet crash of 2001, and so he was in good shape financially. He was in very good shape financially, and here's this guy. He's 30 years old, and there's no point to money for him anymore, other than as a means to an end. He says, I'm wondering what I'm going to do with the rest of my life.
Right.
And I want to do something really important, really, really important. And he had read the book, The Case for Mars, and so he understood why opening up Mars and creating humanity, a spacefaring species, would be something that would be really critical for the human future. And he was also, though, on the other hand, very impressed. He believed that developing solar energy was a key technology for the human future. He says, I'm split. Should I devote myself to solar energy or to Mars? And I argued for Mars. I said, look, the business case for solar energy is pretty straightforward. If anybody can develop solar energy that is competitive with fossil fuels, it will simply happen. And if they can't, then it's not going to happen. And, anybody who's got a credible scheme for doing it can find investors. But Mars, on the other hand, you can't go into Wall Street and say, here's my business plan for starting a Mars colony. They'll laugh you out of the room. And so it would take someone really exceptional to do it. Well, in the end, he decided to do both, and then also did the electric car company too. But yes, he did the space company, and he's not doing it to make money. He'll make money by doing it because this guy's great at making money. He
Sure.
set up a chain of candy stores, and he'd make tons of money.
Yeah, he'd figure out a way to make a fortune with it.
Yeah, he could make money in any line of business you could think of, and practically any line of business is easier to make money with than a rocket company. The saying in aerospace is, if you want to make a small fortune in aerospace, start with a large fortune.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's not doing this to make money. He's making money while he's doing it because he needs money to do it.
How can he blow past companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, who have been established, publicly held companies? And Bezos, too, who still has cash coming in like crazy from Amazon. Well, how did they blow past all these places? Did they hire former NASA engineers? I mean, how did they build their structure?
Well, and that's, I guess, one of the secrets of his success is he's a real organizational genius. I think he looks for two things. One is technological excellence, but also passion. He wants people with passion. He wants people
Desire to make it work.
who, on the weekend, are spending their time thinking about how to make the rocket better. Okay, they're not at the job looking for the clock to hit 5 o'clock so they can go home and not be working on rockets. Okay, over the weekend they're thinking about how, or if they're not at work, they're thinking about it. They're working on it in their heads. And you know, at SpaceX, they work twice as hard and they get paid less than the people at the mainstream aerospace companies. But I think that's what he wants. He wants people who are there to make the revolution, not who are there to buy groceries.
Let's go back to the calls. Let's go to Vaughn in Boston. Vaughn, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hello. I was wondering, is there enough viable water on the moon to sustain life as we know it, especially if they employ the free full clip method? I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's where you reuse the oxygen tanks from the trip up there, and with the viable water, you break it down with electrolysis and refill the tanks.
Well, they just found the water on the moon. Is there enough there, do you think, Robert, to sustain this?
There's certainly enough water on the moon if we're talking about using water to refuel rockets so you can fly back from the moon to Earth using hydrogen oxygen propellant made on the moon. And I think that would be a way to make a lunar base much more economical. Also, you could create rocket flight vehicles that could take off from the lunar base.
Yes, the great Bob Dylan. Well, you know, when I was a little younger, I just didn't appreciate his artistry and his brilliance. I do now, but I sure wish I would have done it years ago. He's a neat guy. We know his son, Jesse, and Bob just keeps doing his thing. Well, I'll tell you what else we're doing these days. I'm thrilled to death to announce, as we've been talking about over the past week, the Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network, and Tom Danheiser is the executive producer. You've got your hands full on this one, my friend.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, though. You know, so last week we debuted the iHeartMedia and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. So this will be a network that will feature podcasts of the paranormal, supernatural, unexplained. Some of the people that you've heard on this show will be doing podcasts. You can hear them on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time, there will be 2 new episodes from Shades of the Afterlife with Sandra Champlain and Joshua P. Warren. His show's called Strange Things. Both of them you have heard here on Coast to Coast AM. Now, the easiest way, if you have a mobile phone, just go to your app store, download the iHeartRadio app. Up in the right-hand corner, there's a little image of a magnifying glass. Just type in the name of the show, and it should pop right up. If you're using a PC, just go to iHeartRadio.com. Same thing, little magnifying glass in the right-hand corner. Type in the name, boom, it goes there. Or, if you want it easy, just go to coasttocoastam.com, and Lex has got the links up there.
Super. Thank you, Thomas. Fantastic. We're going to be back more with Robert Zubrin as we talk about all things space on Coast to Coast AM.